Practically the first thing Donald Trump did after being sworn in as President of the United States again and delivering his inaugural speech was sign a flurry of executive orders, at least a few of which are illegal, a few of which are certainly unconstitutional, which is even worse than illegal, by the way. And among other things, those executive orders rolled back equal opportunity employment protections, gutted environmental policy, targeted immigrants and refugees, refused to recognize the existence, much less the rights, of trans people, began the process of withdrawing the United States from the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Agreement. And oh yeah, he also pardoned over 1,500 criminals who were convicted for their participation in the January 6, 2021 Capitol insurrection, many of whom were convicted on violent offenses, many of whom are convicted on violent offenses for assaulting police officers, which is something Republicans claim that they're super against. But these January 6 convicts, these January 6 insurrectionists, are now free for no other reason than they were on Trump's side, which in Trump's eyes makes them blameless. There have been noises of protest from Democrats, a few glimmers of resistance in the House and the Senate, but the Senate also voted 99-0 to approve Marco Rubio as Trump's Secretary of State. Now, that's not exactly speaking to a coming resistance to Trump, is it? Marco Rubio didn't need Democratic votes to be approved. So what's the point of every single Democrat voting to approve him? Like, to show that they're bipartisan? Nobody cares. To show that they're willing to reach across the aisle and work with Republicans on reasonable measures? Nobody cares, guys. Nobody gives a shit. The Republicans are not going to give you any credit for that. They're not going to give you, well, we should really make more of an effort to work with the Democrats. Because, I mean, they did vote unanimously along with us to confirm Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. They've earned a little bit of respect. That's not going to happen. What is the point? But anyway, I still have some hope that there might be some meaningful resistance to Trump from the Democrats in Congress, but I haven't really seen it yet. The bravest act of resistance so far in this second Trump administration didn't come from any government official. It came from a minister.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger. For we were all once strangers in this land.
That was Marianne Budde. She is the Episcopal Church Bishop of Washington, meaning Washington, D.C., and she was speaking at an interfaith service, a national prayer service at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. And as people who regularly watch my stuff probably know, I am not a Christian. I am not a religious person of any kind. I am an atheist, but I will happily and proudly ally myself with religious folks whose values I share. If our only major disagreement is whether or not God exists, as far as I'm concerned, we should be friends. And Bishop Budde is definitely someone I would be proud to consider a friend and an ally based on that clip that you just watched. Donald Trump has, of course, responded to Bishop Budde's plea to him. He's responded twice, in fact. Here's the first response when reporters asked him about what he had just heard following the service.
What did you think of the service?
What did you think? Did you like it? Did you find it exciting? Not too exciting, was it? I didn't think it was a good service, no. Thank you very much.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
They could do much better.
Yeah, no surprise there. And later on, Trump elaborated on his problems with Bishop Budde's message to him with a post on Truth Social where he wrote, "The so-called bishop who spoke at the National Prayer Service on Tuesday morning was a radical left, hardline Trump hater. She brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. She was nasty in tone and not compelling or smart. She failed to mention the large number of illegal immigrants that came into our country and killed people. Many were deposited from jails and mental institutions. It is a giant crime wave that is taking place in the USA. Apart from her inappropriate statements, the service was a very boring and uninspiring one. She is not very good at her job. She and her church owe the public an apology." He found the service boring and uninspiring. First time at an Episcopal service, Donald? Perhaps the reason she didn't mention all those things that Trump says she didn't mention, like the large numbers of undocumented immigrants killing people, or being deposited across the border from jails and mental institutions, or there being a giant crime wave, is that none of those things is true. The number of undocumented immigrants has never been as high as Trump's fear-mongering suggests, and actually dropped under President Biden. Number of undocumented border crossings, illegal border crossings, dropped under President Biden to levels lower than were recorded during the last time Trump was president, which has to really stick in his craw, you would think. Although he probably just defaults to, well, those numbers are rigged. Well, the Biden administration, they must have just rigged, they must have just lied about the numbers, because there's no way that my administration wasn't as tough on immigration as Biden's administration. Well, ask some immigrants about that. Anyway, immigrants, undocumented immigrants, and documented legal immigrants are statistically less likely to be criminals than people who were born here in the United States, who are natural born citizens. Other countries are not emptying their jails and their mental institutions and sending those people here. That's something that, again, Trump just completely made up. Probably, a lot of people speculate, plausibly, that he misunderstands what people mean when they call people asylum seekers. He assumed that they meant asylum as in a mental asylum, and that other countries were just discharging patients from their asylums and sending them to the United States, because Donald Trump is an inarticulate, ignorant buffoon, and you can't say that enough. And there is no crime wave in the United States. Not one caused by immigrants, not one at all. The FBI reports that crime rates, including rates of violent crime, are trending downward nationwide. In the past, Trump has wildly exaggerated the number of murders that occur in the United States so that he can, again, fearmonger about undocumented immigrants. They're killing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people a year. The last few years, there have been about 20,000 homicides a year in the United States. And look, I'm not going to say that's good. That number should be a lot lower, but it's not nearly as high as Donald Trump would like you to believe. He's citing these numbers that he just pulls right out of his ass. Because not only is he a buffoon, he's a liar. And that is not a partisan statement. That's a statement of fact. And that's something else that cannot be said enough. He's an ignorant buffoon, and he's a liar. And that Trump, the intended audience for that portion of Bishop Buddy's remarks that I just played you in that clip, found what she said to be not compelling and not smart. That says way more about Trump than it says about her or what she said. What in her statement that you just watched was nasty in tone? Does she sound nasty to you? I mean, nasty is his favorite adjective to use about women that he doesn't like. And really, the only thing you need to do in order to be categorized as nasty in the opinion of Donald Trump is to disagree with him or to tell him that he shouldn't be doing something that he's doing or that he should be doing something that he isn't doing. Any kind of criticism of Trump, any kind of challenging of Trump is nasty. What about what she said was radical? He said she's radical left. He said she's a Trump hater. What in her tone suggests that she hates Donald Trump? Now, she may actually hate Donald Trump deep down in her heart, despite her best Christian intentions, because from all indications, she is a good and decent person. And if you're a good and decent person, how can you not hate Donald Trump? Or at least hate everything he stands for and everything he's trying to do? Because all of that stands in direct opposition and, in fact, represents a direct threat to everything that is good and decent. So it seems like if you are a good and decent person, you have to hate Donald Trump, at least deep down inside, a little tiny bit. So maybe that is the case with Bishop Buddy, but you certainly don't get that from her tone. She certainly doesn't come across as a hater. Her tone is very gentle. And she doesn't even ask Trump to do anything specific. She just asks him to act toward people who are afraid with mercy and compassion. Not from a position of authority, not making a command, although I believe she certainly has more moral authority than Donald Trump has ever had or could ever have. But her tone was not authoritarian. It was a tone of petitioning, of supplication. And what was radical about it? Well, I think what Trump found radical about it was the fact that in asking Donald Trump and every single person who supports him to any degree to show mercy and compassion to trans people, to immigrants and refugees, to Muslims and other followers of what are in the United States minority religions, to ask that of Trump and his supporters is to ask them to recognize that those people are human beings entitled to mercy and compassion and respect and equal rights. And that simple plea threatens to demolish Trump's entire project. The trajectory of Donald Trump's political career has been guided by the simple, ignorant proposition that some people just shouldn't count. Racial, ethnic, and religious minorities, queer people, immigrants and refugees, the poor, the sick, they don't deserve opportunities equal to those available to white people, cis hetero people, rich people, privileged people. That's the foundational principle of Trumpism, and by the way, of right-wing politics in general. And here's a tip. When you find yourself opposed to someone who is asking for mercy and compassion on behalf of marginalized and vulnerable people, you're on the wrong side. We're only in the first week of this administration. As I sit here recording this, and as most of you are probably sitting here watching this, it's only the first few days of this second Trump administration. It's going to be a long 4 years. And I don't say that to discourage any of you. I just say that because that's the fact. And the longer it goes, the more important standing up to Trump and his allies will be. And standing up to them is not just about preventing Trump from carrying out his agenda. We should try to do that at every step of the way as often as possible. But we might not be able to stop most of it. At least not for the next 2 years, and maybe not even after that. Who knows? It's not just about that, though. It's about showing people that he is still who he has always been. A liar, a fraud, a crook, a bigot, and a bully. It's about showing people that it doesn't need to be this way, reminding people that it shouldn't be this way and it doesn't have to be this way. So I hope that everyone, but especially journalists and politicians and anyone else with a public platform and a voice people will listen to, including podcasters and YouTubers and TikTokers and people with large social media followings on whatever platform and however they disseminate their messages. Anyone with an audience, anyone with a public platform, I hope that all of us will take inspiration from Bishop Buddy and will use her as an example and speak truth to power and speak truth to Trump. Because the truth is his kryptonite. That's why he's so afraid of it. Especially when you say it right to his face.